Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Apologetics. Hope you're having a good week and keeping busy and doing the best you can. We're going to talk today in apologetics about the usual things we talk about, some of the fallacies, how to look for the truth, who do you trust for the truth, and going to spend a little bit of extra time on that today because we talk all the time about seeking truth. We want to know what the truth is. We want to know, like they say in the court, when you swear yourself into a court, will you tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so that you get the whole picture, not just some little snippet of it. And we're going to talk about places you might go to get the truth, people you might ask for the truth, and also how easily you can be misled by looking at advertising or what other people do, what celebrities do, what sports heroes do, and that sort of thing. It's not necessarily what you really want to do. You may want to be a good actor, good actress, a good musician, a good sports player, but it doesn't mean you have to do all the other things they do. So that's what we want to make sure, again, the whole truth. For example, we've given a number of examples over time about where I will tell you something, but I haven't really quite put it in the right context, so it sounds really funny. Like I said, I think once that I could fly. I told you once that I might be going to prison this summer. And then after we talked about it a bit, I revealed to you in the flying case that no, I'm not crazy. I don't think I can fly like a bird, but I'm a pilot. And I also can buy tickets on airlines. And so I can fly. In the case of other things that you might see where you'll see people tell just a part of the truth, like where I'm going to prison next summer. I think I might I might go there for a ministry. The first thing you might think of is, my gosh, he's done some crime, he might go to prison. Another example might be, there's a scar on my shoulder. If someone asked me, where did you get that scar? I could say, well, there were 4 people. They all had masks. I think they drugged me because I couldn't really resist, and they took some of my money. And the big one had a knife, and he cut me here. Now, from that, you might conclude I was robbed, and you would be right to do so. The fact is, I didn't tell you the whole truth. The whole truth was I had an injury in my shoulder. I needed surgery. They did drug me. They put me asleep. The tall one, my doctor was the one that had the knife. It was a scalpel, and he had to cut to go inside and fix it. And they took some of my money. I paid them for it. So again, it's how you tell the story. Do you get the whole truth? Are you really getting at what you need? We need to be discerning. We'll talk more about that in the talk as we go forward. We're also going to then begin to turn our attention to other religions, and we'll start with some basic categories, and then we'll talk about Christianity, because as we've discussed before, the way you find a counterfeit bill, the way Secret Service agents are trained to find counterfeit currency, is not to look at counterfeit currency. They look at real currency. If you look at real, authentic dollar bills and $100 bills, then when you see a counterfeit, it's easy to tell. This doesn't true up with the truth, with the authentic thing. So that's what we want to be sure we have a very good understanding of Christianity, what we believe, how we believe it, why we believe it, and then we'll look at these other religions and see how they stack up against Christianity. And we're not looking to bash these other religions or the people that believe in them or ridicule them by any means. We just want to point out that we believe, and we have good reason to believe, that they will not lead you to salvation. And that's good for us to know, but it will also be good for the people that practice those other religions to know that. And if we as apologists and as Christians can help them understand that, help lead them to the truth, then we will have done what would please Jesus. That's what he told us to do. Okay, well, this first slide is a little unusual. We're obviously, the class is Christian Apologetics. And what does "not on my watch" mean? Have you heard that expression before? It's an expression that I've learned primarily in the Navy, because we naval officers all have to stand watches. You have to be qualified as a watch officer. And on a ship, that means that you will stand on the bridge and not leave it during the time the captain is not on the bridge. You will be in charge. You'll be his representative. Your job is to navigate the ship, carry out whatever the plan of the day is, make sure the ship is safe and gets where it's going on time and in one piece. And there's an expression that comes out of that called "not on my watch." And it's sort of like this. It says, "No harm will come to this vessel or those who sail in her while I am on watch." And what it means is, it conveys the idea that if I'm going to stand this watch, I'm going to do my very best job. I'm not going to stand up here and be daydreaming and cutting corners, and maybe there's an easier way to do something. Maybe there's something that I should inspect, but I don't see anything going wrong, so I'm not going to bother with it. It means that I'm going to stand a good watch. I'm going to do everything as to the best of my ability, because there are so many of my shipmates counting on me. Some people that don't even know they're counting on me, don't even know that I'm on watch, but they are, because if I do something wrong, it could result in catastrophe on the ship. So that's where the expression comes. If somebody might say to you, hey, we don't really need to check this thing, do we? It's cold outside. We don't need to go out and do that, do we? And you would say, not on my watch. We're going to do anything that we have to on my watch to make sure it goes well. And the point is, the reason I bring this up is it's our watch in the history of the Christian church and history of Christianity. It's our watch. We're here. We're on duty. If not us, then who is going to spread the gospel, is going to help people correct their beliefs about how to find God and whether there is a God or whether they should be atheists? It's our watch, and they may be depending on us and not even know they're depending on us. In the case of an atheist, perhaps, or someone who's a follower of another religion may think they've found what they're looking for, but they really never thought it through. And so as apologists and as Christians, it's our job to do what Jesus told us to do, is go and make disciples of everyone and to go into the world. And I think as apologists, we just want to offer the truth. We want to be sure they've seen the truth. They know how to find it. After that, it's between them and God what they decide to do with it. So we're going to talk about any conversations you might have had about Christianity or your faith, your beliefs. We'll be on the Zoom cast today. We're going to do one of those every week. So if you've had some conversations, these are strange times. You may be talking to people in different ways than you usually do. And people may be wondering, what's going on here? And where's God in all this? And give you a chance to talk a little bit about your beliefs. So if you have, be sure to bring them up on the Zoom meeting. I'll give some time for that this week and in the weeks in the future. Let me know if you have any conversations. We're going to try to also do some role playing on the Zoom meeting, so we'll see how that works out. So I've been saying for some time, find a misspelled word, get an extra raffle ticket. Several of you have done that. Some of you have done that very, very aggressively. And I have purposely had some words misspelled, such as this one. And I've told you, I think in the past, the misspelled words might be right in front of you. So, take a look, make sure that you look very carefully at each slide. And the word misspelled is misspelled here. So some of you caught that, but not everybody. So pay attention to what I'm saying as well as what you're seeing. Keep looking for words that are spelled incorrectly, and you get a raffle ticket. We'll put it in the box and we'll do a drawing. We're going to do a drawing today on the Zoom meeting. Jaden's got all the entries. She's going to pull the 3 winners out, and then what I'm going to need is your info for where to mail it. Also, be sure you've turned in all your homework. Every time you have sent me a homework assignment, I have also put a ticket in the raffle box for you, so your chances of winning increase each time there. Now, we're turning from science to religion now in our studies, and one of the things that I think is going to be most interesting to you is going to be Mormonism. We're going to talk about the Mormons, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which by its name you would conclude, my goodness, they must be Christians just like us. But it turns out they're not, and they believe that we are not Christians just like them. So it's not a one-way street. We'll be talking about Mormonism, and I've asked Mr. Dill, a Bible teacher from Capistrano Valley Christian Schools, also an adjunct professor at Bowley University. He's going to join us on the YouTube video on the 18th of May, a few weeks down the road, and he will also be on the Zoom meetup at 2 p.m. that day. So be sure you circle May 18th, and if you can possibly do it, join us for sure on the Zoom meetup. And I'll try to put his video out there a couple of days early so that you can have a chance to see what he says, so that I can get some questions and ask of him. But I want to send you some material in preparation for that lecture, so I need you to please send me your mailing address. If you've already done it, don't worry about it. And if I don't have it, I'll get in touch with you and tell you I don't have it and ask you to send it to me. But send me that, and what we're going to be sending you, among other things, is a copy of a book called The Ambassador's Guide to Mormonism. It's written by my friend Brett Kunkel, who is now the head of Maven Ministries, and it's kind of a quick guide of what the differences are between Christianity and Mormonism, how it came to be founded by Joseph Smith, and it'll be a great book for you to have and keep in your files. So I'd like you to have that before the lecture by Mr. Dill. You can send me your address. You can send it to me by email. You can text it to me. You can do whatever you want. You can mail it to me. But please do one of those things and get it to me so I can mail you this material. Now, we've been talking about fallacies, and we've covered straw man, ad hominem, red herring, circular, snob appeal, assumptions, and genetic, not generic, genetic, where it comes from. And a fallacy, as you recall, it's a reasoning and argument that renders an argument invalid. And what that means is when someone says something to you that looks suspicious and you think that's not a very good argument, that's not a very good reason to believe that. I think just the simple-mindedest example I can think of is if I make a statement to you that I can only speak 2 words of English. Well, you know that's not true because I spoke more than 2 words in telling you that. Or if I tell you something like, well, you guys are all just in middle school, so I don't believe anything you say. That does not make sense. That's a failure in reasoning. You guys may know all kinds, in fact, you do know all kinds of truth, and truth that I may not know about subjects that I don't study. I know nothing about music. I dare say each one of you knows more about music than I do, and I really mean that. So if I said, well, you're just a middle schooler, you can't tell me anything about music, that's a flaw. Why would that follow? Why would it be just because you're a middle schooler that you couldn't teach me anything? So not true. One we talked about last week that I said I was going to kind of talk a little bit more about this week is something called appeal to the people. And what that means is, are you getting your information based on what other people say? You may see something that say 9 out of 10 scientists agree that Darwinism is correct. Or you might see it in advertisements that 99 out of 100 people think that this product is really delicious. In this ad here that we were looking at last week, they come up with 20,679 physicians say Luckies are less irritating. Now, that could well be that they asked those, and this is an old ad, by the way. I don't think you could find, any physicians today to say that cigarettes are good for you in any way. But it could have well been that this was a survey that said, let's survey a bunch of physicians and ask them which cigarettes, rank these cigarettes in order of being most irritating to less irritating. And if Lucky's wasn't number 1, then anytime 2 and below, they would be less irritating than the one that was at number 1. And so they can come up with this big number. It also says it's toasted, your throat protection against irritation, against cough. I'm not sure that follows either. What does being toasted have to do with anything? You'd need more information. In any case, that's kind of an appeal that sort of says, don't believe what you see advertised. So the question is then, who do you trust to tell you the truth? Where do you go when you need truth? Do you go to your parents? You could go to your pastor. You could go to your youth pastor. We could ask scientists. This is Albert Einstein's came up with the theory of relativity. Here's a famous picture of Albert Einstein. I think someone asked him for a pose for a picture or something, and that's what he did. He looks like his hair is beginning to look a little bit like mine here in this quarantine thing. So, but he wasn't interested in haircuts. He was interested in thinking the big physics thoughts. Do you go to your teacher if you want to know the truth? Do you go to books? Primarily, we would go to the Bible, but there's other books that have truth in it as well. Would you go to books? Would you listen to politicians? Would you look for superheroes to tell you the truth? Ask your friends. Would you go to media, internet, radio, magazines, television, newspapers? You go to Yahoo, Google, Facebook, looking at blogs, Twitter, things like that. Is that where you go to get your information? Well, let me show you a couple of things and this has to do with cigarettes because it's probably the most egregious example, I think, of people trying to sell you something that is terrible for you. Smoking is not good. You may even, people may like it, and even people that like it try to quit it because they know it's not good for them. Here's a TV commercial that was probably in the 50s or 60s where they are promoting cigarette smoking. And if you watched this back then, you might well think, wow, smoking cigarettes is a good thing. Let's take a look.
If you were to follow a busy doctor as he makes his daily round of calls, you'd find yourself having a mighty busy time keeping up with him. Time out for many men of medicine usually means just long enough to enjoy a cigarette. And because they know what a pleasure it is to smoke a mild, good-tasting cigarette, they're particular about the brand they choose. In a repeated national survey, doctors in all branches of medicine, doctors in all parts of the country were asked, "What cigarette do you smoke, doctor?" Once again, the brand named most was Camel. Yes, according to this repeated nationwide survey, more doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette. Why not change to Camels for the next 30 days and see what a difference it makes in your smoking enjoyment? See how Camels agree with your throat. See how mild and good tasting a cigarette can be.
Well, did you notice in there, I want you to pay attention and become more and more able to perceive things in these commercials. This is an old commercial to be sure, but modern ones are the same. They said more doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette. Now, they said they did some surveys all over the country and all that, and that's fine. Whenever the word survey or everybody agrees or science says or scientists say or experts indicate, those are places to kind of, prick up your ears a little bit and think, I wonder what they're really saying here, because it could well be, and I don't know the answer, but I would want to know if I was going to believe this commercial, how many doctors is that? If you surveyed 10,000 doctors around the country and 5 of them said I smoke Camels and 3 of them said I smoke Marlboros and whatever the other brands are, you could truthfully say more doctors surveyed smoke Camels, all 5 of them, than any other brand. And so it would be a misleading ad. It doesn't mean that doctors say this is good for you. They stop short of that. They just say that doctors make the same mistake that everybody else does. They're smoking these cigarettes. So again, that's one of the places where numbers, statistics thrown out loosely like that can be kind of misleading. Now we have another guy called the Marlboro Man. He was another set of commercials. He was a famous icon, if you will. Several actors played him. But he was a guy that was kind of the cool dude, cowboy kind of guy. And he rode the range and was a free, just a what everybody wants to be sort of thing. And that he smoked Marlboros, and so that was a good thing. And so people in their minds might think, well, if I want people to think I'm cool, I want to be sure I pull out a pack of Marlboros when I smoke my cigarette. Let's see what it says about the Marlboro Man here. We'll take a look at his commercial, then I'll tell you some interesting facts about the actors that played him.
Heading for the high country. A new snow and good hunting up there. Up in Marlboro country.
You get a lot to like with a Marlboro. Filter, flavor, packed or box.
Come to where the flavor is. Famous Marlboro Red or new Marlboro 100s, the Longhorns. Come to Marlboro country.
Well, and the sad thing about the Marlboro Man is that at least 4 actors who played the Marlboro Man in the ads died of smoking-related diseases. So, didn't end up quite as cool as riding the range on your horse, and healthy, handsome guy died probably kind of a painful death. They also had them even in cartoons, and that really shocked me. When I was researching for this talk, I had no idea that there were cartoon characters doing it. I knew there were celebrities doing it. People that we like to watch on TV and so forth. But there was also one with the Flintstones. I'm just going to cut this off. There's about 4 of these commercials. I'm just going to run one of them and let you see it. But basically, even cartoon characters were selling cigarettes.
selling, best tasting filter cigarette.
Winston tastes good, like a cigarette should.
And then, of course, Santa Claus was selling cigarettes, Lucky Strikes. Says, Lucky's a light smoke of rich, ripe-bodied tobacco. It's toasted. I don't know where this toasted thing gets in there. That I don't understand that. But anyway, even Santa Claus was selling cigarettes. And again, we now would say this is horrible. My gosh, these ads wouldn't find space anywhere. But the point is, there was a time they were, and there may be, well, other people trying to sell you ideas through the media, through the internet, through advertising of any kind, printed advertising, that is just not right. And so we need to be discerning. Well, that's enough on cigarettes. I just chose cigarettes and was so surprised at all the ads I found, particularly the cartoons, that how many people promoted cigarette smoking as not only sort of not bad, but actually good for you in some cases. And I didn't show you all the commercials, there's a lot more, but today we ban cigarette commercials. We know that cigarettes are bad for you. And we had a pretty good idea back then as well. And yet the promotion and so forth was still going on. So as we look for truth, where do we look for truth? Well, the media is probably, particularly advertising media, is probably not a good place to look. Should we look at celebrities? Should we look at celebrities not necessarily to what to eat or buy, but just to how to live our life? Maybe how to choose what we want to do in the way of a belief system, a worldview system. A lot of people who haven't really learned the truth, have never read the Bible, might easily think, well, if so-and-so, my favorite celebrity, my favorite athlete, is a Buddhist, Hindu, you name it, maybe I should be that. If it's good enough for him, it's good enough for me. Well, maybe not if you know the truth. Let's take a look at celebrities. Celebrities, well-known celebrities. Scientology, there's three, because Christy Alley, Tom Cruise, and John Travolta. I'm not sure who the other lady is, promoting Scientology. Julia Roberts. Hopefully you know who some of these people are. Maybe they're a little before your time, but famous people, well-respected in their business as actors or entertainers. Julia Roberts is a Hindu, says she was raised as a Christian, as far as I know. She just wanted to be a Hindu because it sort of makes her feel good. Not a very good reason, maybe a little fallacy there, but the Beatles, they studied with some gurus in India, and it's a little hard to tell what they ended up being. I think at least one of them ended up being what he called a monotheist, which means a person who would believe in one God, but he stopped short of being a Christian. The others seem to stay around in Hinduism. On the right is two guys that are really disappointing to me. They're both magicians, and I like them a lot as magicians. I've met them both. I've seen them perform in person a couple of times, and I like them both. They're great entertainers, but unfortunately, they're both lost souls. They're both atheists and pretty adamant about it. The only good thing I could say about them, in particular, Penn, who's the big one, is he is not one of these kind of atheists that's always trying to trash Christians. He's actually nice to Christians, as far as I know, and most of the time. He's not always trying to go around wearing his atheism as a big banner and look at me, I'm smarter than everybody else. But he's at least nice about it, and hopefully that would mean he would be open to some discussion. And I hope that somebody does get to him and to tell her, and at least show them what the truth is. Steve Jobs in the lower left, he's the guy that was one of the co-founders of Apple Computer, along with Wozniak, who was the technical guy. Jobs, is, again, unclear to me. He liked Eastern religions, so Hinduism, Buddhism, I think he had some guru, a Hindu guru, speak at his funeral and passed out copies of the guru's books, and but certainly wasn't a Christian. But again, some young guy who's into computers might well have thought back then, wow, Jobs is a genius. He's a Buddhist, let's say. If I'm a Buddhist, I could be a brilliant guy and found a company like Apple. Again, wrong thinking, fallacies. And then, of course, Tiger Woods, the golfer, he was raised a Buddhist. Jobs was raised a Christian, I believe, and so was Julia Roberts, and so were some of the others, a couple of the Beatles, I believe. Tiger Woods was raised a Buddhist, is a Buddhist as far as I know, and again, a great golfer. Not to take anything away from these people and their other achievements. Beatles sold a lot of music. Jobs changed the world with personal computers and iPhones and iPods, iPads. Julia Roberts, great actress. The two magicians, great magicians. Tiger Woods, great golfer. Not taking that away, but you don't want to make a correlation that says, wow, if I take their religion on, then I'll be the same as them. What we want to be is discerning. We want to have discernment, and that's the ability to judge well. The Bible says, teach me good judgment and knowledge. Help me be discerning. Help me be able to filter out the flaws and the fallacies and the things that don't that aren't true, and find what it is we're looking for, which is the truth. So you don't want to Google your questions. You want to seek reputable sources. So with that, that's just a little background of us of what are we doing. I want to make sure that it's so easy and so tempting to go look on, just Google something and you don't really know where the source is, but you get an answer there and you begin to think, wow, that must be truth. Clearly, you can Google things and go on the web and go to sources that we trust. And I've given you all a long list of various websites and things that I would offer to you that you can trust to get the right answers. And even I check them. I go to more than one source to make sure that that there's not a counter argument to something that I've just seen. So again, that's just what I wanted to sort of establish here in this talk, that we're looking for truth. And we need to be very discerning in doing and being very careful that we not let our emotions get into it and think, wow, that looks like fun. That's a cool person. I'm going to believe what they believe because they're cool. And if I believe that, then I'll be cool. Not so. So every religion has some version of the golden rule buried in it somewhere. In some religions, I believe in Confucianism in particular, they have what they call the silver rule. And that's a variation and actually an inversion of the golden rule. The silver rule states, do not do unto others as you would not have them do unto you. And it kind of has, the golden rule is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And the silver rule has a bit of a deficiency in that it only requires someone not to harm others and doesn't ask them to actually do something positive to the other person. It's more or less you're going to avoid doing anything bad to them, but you could do that by just avoiding them altogether. So that's the point being, there are some truths in other religions, but the fundamental truth, the more it's important, is Jesus Lord, is Jesus the only way to God. That's going to be missing. And perhaps the reason we'll find these similar ethics and morals in other religions is because we're all created in the image of God and they're implanted in our hearts. They just don't realize where they came from. Turning our attention now to world religions, we're going to look, of course, we've looked at Christianity. We know a lot of Christianity, but we're also going to show how Christianity compares and contrasts and is different from Islam, Judaism, Buddhism, Hinduism, and some other religions as well. And I think most times when people try to combine the religions of the world, they probably throw people like Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses and others into Christianity because they claim to worship Christ. I don't think they're particularly discerning themselves as to what is Orthodox Christianity versus maybe some of these offshoots and apostate versions of Christianity. But for our purposes, we'll be talking about Orthodox Christianity, traditional Christianity, the biblical Christianity. And I think it's best that we look at things like Islam. There are Muslims who know no more about Islam than there are some Christians who know very little about Christianity. The evidence for the truth of it, really even what the Bible says. And I know there's Muslims that I've talked to that just don't know much about it. That's just, I was born a Muslim. I go to the services on Friday, and my parents are happy with me, and everything's cool. So they don't really know much about it either. So what we're going to talk about is what is actually taught in these religions. What does Christianity actually teach? What does the Bible say? What does Islam? What does the Quran? What did Muhammad actually teach? Same thing with the other religions. And also when we get into Mormonism, not necessarily what your neighbor who's a Mormon would tell you he believes or she believes, but what Joseph Smith taught and what the Book of Mormon and the Pearl of Great Price and the Mormon Church teaches. That would be our best benchmark, because quite frankly, if someone was in Mormonism and thought it was fine and then found out that it's not fine, they would presumably want to change if they're actually seeking the truth. So it's important that we know and we talk to them about what does your faith really teach, not maybe what you believe or what your friends believe. It's like we talked about with the definition of truth. There's subjective truth that could be true for me, but not for you. It's what I believe. If I believe it, it's true for me, versus objective truth. There is a God. That's objective whether I believe it or not. Whether there was no one on this planet that believed that Jesus is Lord does not mean he's not Lord. It just means that there's a lot of people that don't know the truth. So we want to keep that in mind as well, particularly when talking to other people about their religion. We want to talk to them about what does the religion actually teach, not necessarily what you've been told it teaches or what your friends think it is or what you feel. Okay, so to get started, just kind of in general, want to talk a little bit about the four classifications that we might deal with here. One is monotheism. That's Judaism, that's Christianity. That means theism means God, a deity. Mono means one. We're believing in one God. Polytheism means you're believing in many gods. That means that there could be 2 or 3 gods, like the Greeks and the Romans used to believe in, several gods and goddesses. Actually, we'll see as we study Mormonism that they are actually polytheists. They actually believe in more than one God. Then there's pantheism. That's kind of a philosophical Hinduism. And what that means is just kind of the way they view it, that everything is God. Everything that's around us is God. God is us. God is everywhere. There's not a personal being like Jesus, a God. It's just that everything is God. Everything is divine. And then there's, of course, atheism. And atheism is atheism. In other words, against theism, opposing theism. And examples of that are, of course, what we know as atheists. But also there's some of the Buddhists basically are atheists in that they believe in a philosophy, in a way of kind of trying to live their life in a way that they'll achieve nirvana, which is not correct. It's a little hard to explain nirvana. We'll get to it later. But they really don't have a God necessarily that they worship as a God. So from there, the top 5 world religions are Christianity, number 1, Islam, number 2, and then Hinduism, Judaism, Jewish, and Buddhism. Those are the 5 world religions that, and we'll talk a little bit about each one of those. And you see, Mormonism doesn't show there for a couple of reasons. One is there's not enough Mormons to make it onto this list of the top 5. And I think a lot of the liberal and maybe even atheistic professors that do some of this research just lump them into Christianity. So that's fine. We'll know the difference. There's also some religions that have a significant number of followers. There's Baha'i, Buddhism, Confucianism, that's Confucius in China, also a philosopher. Hinduism, also, by the way, I forgot to mention in Hinduism, being a polytheistic religion as well, they have something like millions of gods and goddesses. They have some primary ones, Krishna being one, maybe the primary one. But in Hindus, they seem to have an enormous number of gods and goddesses. And it's never been made clear to me exactly how they deal with all that. Are the others important, or are they just looking for 1 or 2 and believe there must be a whole lot out there and we just don't know who they even are? Islam, Jainism, Judaism, Shintoism, Sikhism, Taoism, and Zoroastrianism. Those are some of the religions with a good number of followers in there. And we're not going to have time to study them all, but they all kind of fall into the different categories that we mentioned in the beginning. And we'll talk about the ones that I think you're going to be most likely to encounter as you get into college and live your life. So then the question is that, as always, we talked about last week, which religion is true? Are they all true, or none of them true, or is one of them true? And that's what we're going to, be talking about here. I mean, we believe that Christianity is the only true religion, the only true belief system, that Jesus is the only way to God. And I hate sometimes to talk about religion versus what we believe, because religion sometimes conjures up, particularly in other people's minds, kind of a formal system of going through rituals and things like that. And when people ask me, are you a religious person? I like to answer them by saying I'm a follower of Jesus. And to make sure that I'm not going to be sort of painted as a wrong understanding of what a religious person is, a person who really follows Jesus and tries to live his life in a way that's pleasing to Christ. Whereas I think a lot of people, particularly people who have never studied it much, have an entirely different view of what religion is. It's to them, it's just a set of rules, a set of strange rituals they might go through, and that sort of thing. One of the problems in trying to decide, are all the religions the same, and we'll see it in a video I'm going to show you in a bit, is that world religions are irreducible. And what that means is you can't bring them all down to a common thing that says, yeah, this is what we agree on. This will get us all to heaven. And yeah, there's details we don't agree in. It would be the same thing as maybe two Christian churches. And if we were going to try to reconcile them, one church may say we like contemporary music. The other church says we like classical Christian music. That's not a problem. We can reduce those churches down to a belief in Jesus and faith in the Bible being true. And those extraneous things are not important. But you can't do that with world religions. You can't. By the time you try to throw out the things we disagree in, there's really just not much left. So the homogenizing, in other words, trying to mix them all together, distorts the religions, and there is no low common denominator, other than maybe you might say we're trying to look for the truth. But as far as the belief systems, there's not one that comes together for all the world. Turning our attention to other religions, going a little bit further down into it, there is first a category. We're going to talk about just categories. Most people would not necessarily identify them as themselves as this, but there is a thing called theism. Theistic meaning of God. Theism is broadly defined as the belief in the existence of a supreme being or deities, could be more than one. And in common use, and when contrasted with deism, which we'll talk about next, it describes sort of the classical concept of God that's found in monotheism, which is also called classical theism. It would be very similar to the God of the Bible, but it doesn't have to be. It can be a Muslim could be a theist. They're believing in a supreme being. Now, deism, and also typically in theism, the God is typically would be all powerful, would be the creator, and would in some way be involved with the earth. In deism, on the other hand, it's a philosophical belief that says that God exists, there is a God, and he's ultimately responsible for the creation of the universe, but he doesn't interfere directly with the created world. In other words, he gets it going and then steps back and watches to see what would happen. To me, that is somewhat similar to what we talked about a few weeks ago when we were talking about theistic evolution, where some Christians will try to say, yeah, look, evolution is true, Darwinian evolution is true, we can count on it, we can believe it, science has proven it, and however, God's involved in there some way. He got it all started, and he's using evolution to create things in the world. He used evolution to help in the creation. And the problem with that is, as we talked about, first of all, Darwinian evolution is really in a lot of trouble right now scientifically. And when it falls apart, then where are you with theistic evolution? What happened then? What's your story then? And secondly, Darwinian evolution, by its definition, is random without any influence on it at all. And that doesn't, so what's the point of having God in this equation then? What did he do? Their idea would be, at best would be that God got it started. And my question to them is, well, does he know what's going to happen when he gets it started? Did he start it in a manner that it will develop a certain way? Because if so, that's not what Darwinianism is. So in any case, deism is that. God gets it started and then just kind of steps back. Then inside that we talked about polytheism. It's a worship or a belief in a number of multiple deities. They're usually assembled into a group of gods and goddesses along with their own religions and rituals. And you may worship each one of them in a little different way. Most religions that accept it, the different gods and goddesses tend to be representations of forces of nature or some principles. It could be the god of thunder, the god of lightning, the god of war, the god of the oceans, that sort of thing. And most of the polytheistic deities of ancient religions, with the exception of Egyptian and Hindu deities, were conceived as having physical bodies. There was a Zeus, there was a Aphrodite, there is a Mars. The gods that they conceived of actually had a physical body. They were just, you might say, superhuman, I suppose. And polytheism is a type of theism. Within theism, it contrasts with monotheism, which is the belief in a single God. But that's polytheism. I think of polytheism most commonly as the beliefs of the Romans and the Greeks, back with all of their gods and goddesses. And then pantheism, as we said earlier, is the belief that reality is identical with the divinity. In other words, all things compose an all-encompassing, immanent God, that God is in just everything. So we're going to be talking about the world religions, becoming more specific now. And we're going to start with Christianity. And Christianity, of course, is our belief. We want to study Christianity just briefly here, just to remind you of what are the elements of Christianity. What do we believe? Where do we say this is what we believe, and we can't change that at all? So as we come to the end of the class, I want to show you a couple of videos. One is just a kind of an overview as we talk about Christianity and what we believe in Christianity. What does it mean in comparison to the other religions? And I found this video. It's about 4 minutes long, made by the Salvation Army, and I think it gives a good overview of how some of the just broad differences between Christianity and other religions are. We're going to go much deeper into this in the weeks ahead, but this will give you an idea to kind of maybe a summary to keep in your head as to where we're going with this. So take a look.
Isn't Christianity at its core the same as other religions? If you could put it in a pot and boil it down, wouldn't the remainder smell, look, and taste the same as Judaism, Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, and the rest? What is religion? Just as we refer to our minds as being thoughts and ideas beyond the electrical impulses of our physical brain, the major religions propose that the human's true essence is their soul instead of their physical body. But just like our physical bodies, the soul also has needs, or it will starve. Each religion proposes to be a guidebook of that spiritual plane that helps lead our starving souls to soul bread. Aren't these guidebooks all the same? The historical Jesus of Nazareth told a story about a father, 2 sons, and a family business. It was custom that the sons would split the business when their father died. But the younger son said to his father, "I can't wait for you to die. Give me my money now." Seeing his son's true heart, the father gave it up to him. The son turned his back to his family and hit the road. Far away, he partied like an animal, eating and drinking and paying prostitutes, until suddenly his pockets were empty. In desperation, he found a job feeding pigs. But the country's economy crashed, and he couldn't even make enough to feed himself. Now broke and starving, he found himself craving the pig's slop, when it suddenly hit him that there was probably food back home. What do you think? Should this father let him back into the house? As long as the son works hard to pay his father back, then he should be able to get a place at the family table again, right? Let's see how Jesus ended this story. The son decided to return, admit his wrong, and ask his father for a minimum wage job. But still a ways from home, his father spotted him and ran out to him and wrapped him in a bear hug. Remorseful, the son began his plea. "Dad, you shouldn't even call me your son anymore." But the father put a fine robe on him and a ring with the family crest. He told his workers, "Get the best meat and prepare a welcome home feast, for this son of mine was dead and has come to life again. He was lost and has been found." Although Jesus told this as a story, he was actually presenting his view of the truth. In the story, the Father represents God. So is Jesus seriously teaching that God forgives selfish gluttons before they've repaid their wrongs against him and others? Judaism teaches that one can atone for their wrongs by changing their behavior, praying, and doing good deeds. Islam says we can move towards paradise by performing the 5 pillars. Hinduism claims that if we store up enough good karma, we will reunite with Brahman. Buddhism says we can enlighten and discipline ourselves into nirvana by practicing the 8-fold path. But in this story, the father embraced his son and fed him before he did any work. Why? Because in Jesus' view, it's impossible for a person to repay God for their bad deeds. God is a perfect judge who cannot be bought off with anything that we have to offer. Jesus said that when we die, we will face God with all of our deeds laid out. None of us is completely morally perfect, and none of us will stand a chance of justifying ourselves. Then, is there hope for us? Jesus believed so, and staked his life on it. He claimed to be God in human form who came to pay our moral debt with his innocent life, so that if anyone truly believed and surrendered to him, they would receive a full pardon from God and the power to change how they live. Other religions teach that our own self-sacrifice can pay our debt, but Jesus taught that only God's own self-sacrifice can pay our debt. All other religious founders claim to be guides to lead our starving souls to bread. Jesus claimed to be the bread our souls starve for.
And I have a video I'd like you to watch called "Is There Meaning to Life?" And the video is made by Reasonable Faith, William Lane Craig's organization. Very good guy. I've taken some courses from him at Biola. He lives in Atlanta. And this is a video of just two people discussing, an atheist and a Christian. And the atheist is sort of asking, is there a meaning to life? What is the meaning? How can we know the meaning? And the Christian is trying to say, as an atheist, there basically is no meaning to life. If you believe in Christ, then there is meaning to life. But as an atheist, you can say there's meaning to life, you can say there's morality, you can say all these things, but you really can't back it up with any of your beliefs. So I want you to watch how the Christian talks with him, how the dialogue goes. She's very understanding. She doesn't get excited. She's not derisive. She doesn't try to, say what a dummy you are. How can you believe that garbage? And in fact, she often says, agreed. I agree with you. Yes, that's true, but. So let's take a look at this video for two reasons. One is I just want you to get an example of how a Christian might intersect with an atheist, and also just look at some of the techniques she's using, that we can use those when you're talking with other people about their faith.
Nobody asked me if I wanted to exist. Yeah, one day, boom, there you are, and you think to yourself, why am I here? Well, what do you think? Is there a reason we're here? Do our lives have any real significance?
Well, that depends.
On what?
On whether or not God exists.
Wait, hold on. Are you saying that my life has no significance because I don't believe in God?
No, not at all. I'm saying that if God doesn't exist, it doesn't matter what you believe. Our lives would have no objective meaning, value, or purpose. Many atheists themselves recognize this. If atheism is true, life is absurd.
Okay, and why do they think that?
To begin with, if God does not exist, then the physical universe is all there is. Which means you and I are just accidental byproducts of nature.
Right. So?
That means we were not intentionally designed. So there's no purpose for us being here.
Whoa.
It gets worse. If God does not exist, there is no absolute standard of moral value. You've heard of Richard Dawkins, the atheist. He points out that in a materialistic universe, there is at bottom no design, no purpose, no evil, no good, nothing but pointless indifference.
So you're saying atheists can't be good people?
No, I'm not saying that. Many atheists live good lives. What I'm saying is, atheism fails to provide an objective basis for saying any particular action is good or evil.
Oh, come on. After millions of years of sociobiological evolution, humans have developed a sense of morality. We all know it's good to feed a hungry child and bad to torture someone for fun.
Of course we do, but that's precisely what atheism cannot explain. If there's no God, then what we consider right or wrong is nothing more than an accident of evolution or a human social convention.
So what? I'm good with that.
Really? Evolution implies survival of the fittest, not morality. And social convention means that racism, intolerance, and cruelty are not really wrong. They just happen to be unpopular.
Okay, so atheists need to come up with some objective standard for rights and wrongs. How about this? If an action leads to human flourishing, then we can say it's objectively good. And if it doesn't, it's objectively evil.
But why think that human flourishing is good? Aren't you being species-centric? Why not refer instead to the flourishing of rats or cabbages?
Well,
And who gets to decide what contributes to human flourishing? Hitler was convinced killing millions of Jews would promote human flourishing. And Margaret Sanger thought forcing poor people to be sterilized would lead to human flourishing. As Kai Nielsen points out, pure practical reason will not take you to morality. So if atheism is true, there is no legitimate basis for saying that behaving one way is worse than behaving any other way. So it really doesn't matter how you live your life. Your day-to-day choices are meaningless.
That's depressing.
So if there's no God, what happens when you die?
Well, nothing. You simply cease to exist.
Right. So one person lives a kind, generous, thoughtful life. Another lives a horrible, violent, selfish life. It doesn't matter. In both cases, the outcome is the same: nothingness. So how can their life choices have any objective meaning?
Well, it's certainly meaningful if I discover a cure for cancer or save a child's life.
I agree completely. But atheism can't explain why. Scientists predict that eventually the whole universe and mankind with it will die out. So everything comes to nothing. That's why atheist Bertrand Russell says we must build our lives on the firm foundation of despair.
No thanks. I'd rather live a happy life.
You're not alone. Every atheist has to choose between being happy or being consistent. You can tell the whole world you're an atheist, but you can't really live like one.
Okay, so you're a Christian. If your God did exist, how would that change anything?
If Christianity is true, then each one of us is here for a reason. And life does not end at the grave. And God, He's the absolute standard of goodness. He knows you, He loves you, and He intentionally created you. So your life ultimately does have objective meaning, value, and purpose. That means you can live a life that's both happy and consistent.
Well, that doesn't prove Christianity's true.
Agreed. I'm simply pointing out that for Christians, living a life that is both happy and consistent is possible. For atheists, it's not. So what are you going to choose?
Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed that video. It was a good conversation between the man and the girl. And again, look at the way she treated him, how with respect, as she said things like, I agree, we agree on that. A favorite thing of mine to use with someone who's asserting something that I'm going to try to show them why it's wrong is we'll start out with saying, you may be right. Well, let's look at the facts. And that's sort of a disarming thing to say. It doesn't say, you're stupid, I'm smart, let me show you how you can be smart like me. It says, you may be right. I'll look at it too, but let me give you my arguments. And it's a good way to start, I think, and it works well with most people. I have one more thing, and that's the magic trick for the day. It's a show about the world being full of illusions. We've talked a lot about illusions today. TV commercials, looking at celebrities to model our life after how they live their lives. Arguments being made and statistics being given that really aren't very accurate. So the world is full of illusions. And the magic trick for this week is one. I'm just going to show you a video this week of a trick that I saw on YouTube that looked pretty interesting. I haven't done it for a long time. You might want to do it. It takes a little bit of work to do. And then next week, I'm going to show you a couple of versions of the same trick, not this trick, of a different trick that you can use. I use it a lot in restaurants when I'm meeting with people, but you could use it at the dinner table. You need to be at a table or a desk, and it takes pretty much no props. And I'll show you how that works next week. And hopefully you'll be able to use that and amaze your friends with that. So let's take a look at the magic trick, and then I will see you hopefully on the Zoom meeting. And otherwise, I'll meet you right back here on YouTube next week. Have a good week.
We'll tell you where to actually get the money. 1, 2, 3. The coins are coming out of nowhere. Could I get one of those plates? Of course! We couldn't do that without some preparation first. Get 2 plates and glue a paper pocket to the bottom of each one. Place a coin in each of the plates. The only thing is that it takes a bit of training to get it just right. Bibbidi, Bobbity. Boo! This easy trick is great for beginner magicians. The knot gets untied inside a towel roll? What is this? Is this the power of will? Nope, it's the power of the magic hole. Cut out a small circle in the roll. Through that hole, you should be able to hold the string with your finger. Keep it a secret.